Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, drowning inside. What time do you call this, Maggie? I know, I'm sorry. The traffic. Don't give me that. You're never late. I had things to do. Things? Like what? Jimmy, don't start. What's with the sunglasses? They're just sunglasses. Take them off. Jimmy, please, take them. Office of Fine. What the hell happened? It's nothing. Damn it. Who gave you the shiner? Jimmy, leave it alone. Was it Neil? Number Terry then. Jimmy? It was, wasn't it? Fine? Yes, it was Terry. That son of a... Why? Jenkins. Keep your voice down. You don't know about my problems, sir. We don't want to hear about your private life, Jenkins. I didn't come here to fight, Jimmy. Then why did you come? Because we need to talk. Talk about what? United States. Us? There is no us while I'm stuck in here. You're wrong. There's still an us. Doesn't feel like it. You've been different lately. How would you even know that? I see it. The way you look at me, or don't. The way you talk, or don't. I'm tired, Jimmy. I bet you are, love. It's not easy by myself, but you manage. Barely. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. Keep what up? This life. Alone. You're not alone. That's what it feels like. You've got the kids. They're not you. Then wait for me. Wait. Jimmy, you 4 more years. So? You knew that when I got sentenced. I didn't know it would feel like this. Feel like what? Like I'm drowning inside. You're stronger than this, Maggie. Maybe I'm not. Don't say that. It's the truth. You're just having a bad day. It's not just a day, it's every day. You want me to feel sorry for you? Jimmy, don't make this worse. I'm not the one making it worse. Why did Terry hit you? He thought I was cheating on you. Cheating? With Neil? That's what he said. Are you kidding me? I didn't do anything, Jimmy. And Terry thought it was okay to hit you over a rumor? It's not just that. Then what is it? I don't know. Maybe he thinks I owe him. Owe him? For what? For keeping an eye out for me and the kids. That's rich, coming from that piece of... Jenkins, I'm warning you. Stay out of this, sir. I see your sort every day, Jenkins, and hear how doing time affects families. You don't know nothing about me and my brood, boss. Yes, but I know how kids drift with absent fathers. When I want your opinion, I'll ask for it. Touch a nerve, did I, Jenkins? Jimmy, stop. He's not wrong. What? Bernie's angry. Linda's angry. They're lost, Jimmy. It's not like I abandoned them. Maybe not. But you're the one who took the fall. I didn't want you and the kids dragged into it. I can't do this on my own anymore. Maggie, don't. Don't what? Tell you the truth? Neil and Terry were supposed to have my back. Instead, they're wrecking my family. You wrecked it, Jimmy, when you got caught. Again. You think I wanted that post office job to go sideways? It didn't just go sideways, it exploded. I was the one who got burned, Maggie, and the rest of us didn't. I did it for you. You always say that. I mean it. And what about Linda? What about her? She's in trouble at school, Jimmy. Trouble? She got caught smoking. Not Linda? Yes, Jimmy. Linda. At least it wasn't weed. What makes you think that? God damn it. Why didn't you tell me? And say what? That I can't handle my own daughter? Maybe I could have talked to her and told her. From inside? How do you reckon that'd work out? Linda listens to me. She misses you, Jimmy. I miss her too. She's angry. At me. At the world. Linda feels abandoned. But I haven't forgotten about her. She doesn't see it that way. What am I supposed to do, Maggie? Maybe you should have thought about that before taking on another job. I didn't plan for things to go wrong, but they always do. This was supposed to be my last job. That's what you said last time. I mean it this time. Linda doesn't believe in you anymore. Don't say that. It's true. She was a daddy's girl, and now she's street smart, and now she's fallen in with a bad crowd. I hate missing her grow up. Then why do you keep ending up in here? I don't know. Yes, you do. It's the life, Maggie. Then change it. You know it's not easy. It's easier than losing your family. You make it sound so simple, Maggie. I'm serious, Jimmy. It's your choice. You're giving up on us? I'll survive. Without me, without Neil, without Terry, without all of this. Give me a chance. I'll fix it. I don't think you can. I can. I will. Jimmy. Maggie, I swear to you, I'll get out and I'll make it right. How? I'll get out of the life. For you. For Linda. I've heard it all before. This time I mean it. You better, Jimmy. Maggie, there's something else, isn't there? What do you mean? The bruise, the sunglasses? You've been crying. There's more. It's Bernie. Bernie's tough. He'll be fine. He wasn't fine last night when he crashed his motorbike. What happened? He's in the West Middlesex. Why didn't you tell me sooner? You've enough to worry about. But he's my son, Maggie. Your son? He barely talks about you. What do you mean, he? You two never got along. That's not true. It is, Jimmy. He's angry, just like Linda. Is he going to be all right? The doctors think so. What happened? He saw the bruise. He got angry. Went out on his bike to blow off steam and lost control. Because of Terry? Because of everything, Jimmy. Maggie, Don't. Just stop. I'll make it right. You keep saying that. I mean it. Then prove it. Time's up, people. Let's be having you. Maggie, please, don't give up on us. You know I can't promise that. You can't leave me now. Goodbye, Jimmy. I'll change. We'll see. Better fires. Dear Jay, I lit the mailbox on fire when I saw you kissing Em. Others told me that when feeling too much, one might hurt oneself. There might be cuts along the arm or starvation. I had no inclination toward self-harm. From a very young age, I understood that the world does enough to you. Why do any more to yourself? I saw you kissing Em behind the cafetorium, and I ran all 7 blocks home. On the way, I saw the Gozer's blue mailbox, and I knew it had to burn. 1 match around the base, and it went up quickly along with whatever mail was inside of it. The red flag was up, and I did it anyway. Later that night, I attended a slumber party and started the rumor that you had done it, that I often saw you lighting ants on fire with a magnifying glass as though that was a natural origin for someone who would eventually begin setting better fires. Some of the girls believed me. Some didn't care. One told me that you kissed her after her shift at Pizza Grace, and your mouth tasted like a fountain drink. I watched her after she fell asleep. I visualized her waking up to find her hair on fire, but I didn't do it. I didn't want to hurt anyone, not even you. When I asked you to the dance, you told me that you'd already agreed to go with G, even though that was a lie. I knew it was a lie, because I knew enough about you by then. When you lied, your left eyebrow would twitch. Maybe it still does. Do you still lie? Would you tell me if you did? I told you that I understood and wished you well. I knew that you were going to ask G as soon as I was out of sight. Then, if you changed your mind, you'd simply pick someone else to bring. What you were never going to do is show up with me. Not me. The girl who had to wear baggy tops to hide how much she developed between sophomore and junior year. Not me. The know-it-all who the teachers had stopped calling on, because she always knew the path Napoleon took on his first campaign and the first 15 numbers of pi. I don't think intelligence was a turnoff for you. On the contrary, I think you wanted me to be smarter. You wanted me to be so smart that kissing me would be like allowing dark matter down your throat to rip you apart from the inside. You held me to a different standard. I'm sorry, Jay. I didn't know that's what was going on. I thought you just wanted to kiss the prettiest girls in the school. I never investigated what your deeper motives might have been. The day you told me you couldn't take me to the cotton candy dance, I went to the greeting card store in town and set fire to all the get well cards. They were at the back of the store, and there was only one cashier working. I made quite a pile, struck the match, and walked right out. By the time the smoke alarm went off, I was already watching from down the street. Lucky for me, greeting card establishments don't have security cameras. I went to a pool party the following weekend and told everyone there that you'd confessed to me a year ago that you hated greeting cards. Seeds were planted. A freshman who was at the party told me that you'd been putting removable tattoos in her locker. Hearts with knives in them, and mermaids who refused to smile. She pulled down her bathing suit bottom and showed me where she'd placed one of the tattoos. It looked like Joan of Arc tied up and suffering her great punishment. I think you're right, she whispered to me in between bites of a burnt hamburger. I think he might be obsessed with fires. Why else would he give me this? The world will give you all the answers you want if you know exactly how to phrase the questions. On the way home from the pool party that day, I saw you in your front yard, mowing the lawn without a shirt on. I waved to you, and you waved back. You flexed for me, and then laughed. I saw a clean line of sweat going down your back to the gray t-shirt that was tucked into your red shorts. I wanted to cover myself in grass and let you run over me. It took me a moment to realize that my hand was still raised in a frozen greeting. You had stopped my time. You'd put me in a deep freeze. Only one thing could dissolve it. The day before graduation, I burned down the school. Part of me knew that eventually it would come to that. I'd used my allowance every week to buy kerosene, matches, bottles, rags, and any other accelerant I could find. The man at the hardware store questioned me about it early on, but I told him that teenage girls were using these types of things to help with our hormones. He seemed perplexed, but no man over 40 wants to know why teenage girls are doing any of the things they do. The next time I came in, he'd set aside some paint thinner for me. It was on sale, 2 for 1. That's what I used in the second floor bathrooms. There was no commencement that year, no caps, no gowns. The only thing thrown up in the air was the spray of a fireman's hose. Students gathered around the periphery of the school. Some cried. I held my homeroom teacher as she asked why anyone would do something like this. I knew that the two of you were writing inappropriate notes to each other between periods. She must have justified it by telling herself that you were mature for your age. And maybe she was right. I try not to condemn anyone if I can help it. The worst condemnation of all has already occurred. The day of the school fire was also the day of the harvest. Everything I'd put into the ground was ready to be reaped. Rumors about your love of starting fires were too widespread to ignore, even though, in many ways, you were the town's favorite son. Your father had been the star linebacker for the football team back when he was in school. Your mother was valedictorian. You were going to do great things, and you were going to go far, and you were going to kiss every girl you wanted to kiss, and never give me more than a wave or a flex of your muscles only to laugh at me for staring. All of that got burned up and turned to rubbish. You went to jail for the very first time. When you got out, you couldn't find a job. Your parents disowned you. You couldn't even find a woman gullible enough to take you in, because by then, you reeked of smoke. Soon, you were dealing drugs and holding up food marts and gas stations. I lost track of how often you were in and out of prison, but I know you're there now. And I'm sorry, Jay. I'm sorry for the part I played. I'm sorry for every match I struck. I'm sorry you didn't see that I could have learned more. I could have caught on faster. I could have bloomed had you only allowed me some light. When you get out, I plan to be waiting for you. I'll pick you up and you can come stay with me. You can mow my lawn. You don't have to give me anything, just the respect I was owed back when we were children. Back when you thought a little cold water would put me out. You never knew that I was electric, did you, Jay? You never tasted my grease. You never thought to smother me. A little cold water. What was that going to do? I'll be standing at the gates when they release you. I'll bring the cigarettes you like. I'll light the first one. Then, I want a kiss. A nice, long kiss. I want to taste the emission. I want you to fill me up with smoke until I feel as though I'm never going to breathe again. Just another dead girl underwater. Trigger warning. Implications of death, violence, and sexual harassment. By the time the fisherman finds me, I will have been dead for 33 hours, 6 minutes, and 29 seconds. 18 hours since the police declared me missing. 15 hours since Zoe told my biology teacher that my tent was empty, that I hadn't returned from the party we'd snuck out to the night before. Careful, quiet, every twig a possible snitch. It was exhilarating, our hearts pounding, the smell of pine and seaweed thick in the air, and the moon a perfectly curved sickle. Zoe held my sweaty hand and didn't let go until we'd passed the tents and joined the others by the lake. The music on someone's phone was turned down just low enough for us to make out Billie Eilish's raspy voice. One of the guys offered us a beer, kept cool in the pitch-black lurking water. I remember thinking I couldn't tell where the lake ended and the forest began. The first article published by a local newspaper reads, "Promising high school student missing after night swim in lake." Shortly after, the water rescue service and fire brigade take over the search. Dogs comb the area, their noses trailing through the damp earth. A human chain forms, people moving slowly through the woods, eyes scanning for any sign of me. Even a helicopter hovers overhead, its whirring blades slicing through the heavy, charged air. The search drags on for hours, stretching into the twilight, yet the woods remain silent. The police begin to ask questions. When was she last seen? What was she wearing? Had she been drinking? Did she seem out of character? Angry? Sad? Suicidal? No, no, and no. She was singing. She was dancing. She seemed happy. When the fisherman finds my body, miles away from where I was last seen, certainty sets in. The autopsy reveals a hematoma on my head and purple spots behind my ears. The coroners examine the water in my lungs and confirm that I wasn't dead before entering the water. I died by drowning. My classmates are questioned again. Zoe claims to have left early, while I stayed behind with her twin brother, Tom, who has been in love with me since middle school. Tom's behavior strikes the police as odd. He insists he barely spoke to me, despite people seeing us leave the party together for a few minutes. When my body is examined, traces of Tom's skin are found on my clothes, trapped between the fabric layers. Still, Tom sticks to his story, perhaps because the truth would embarrass him for some reason. Or maybe he's just afraid of the questions that would follow and the scrutiny that might come with them. Tom is right, in the broadest sense. We really only exchanged 3 or 4 sentences that night, but only because Tom's mouth was otherwise occupied with me. I had enjoyed every second of it, and looking back, I wish I'd given him a real chance. But I was too worried about what other people might think. So, as usual, I brushed him off, leaving him to walk away from the party feeling hurt. Cassandra insists she heard Zoe and me arguing that night, just before Zoe headed back to the campsite. According to her, we were fighting over Tom. Of course she would say that. What else would 2 girls argue about if not a boy? Cassandra even claims that Zoe pushed me, though Zoe denies it vehemently. She denies discussing Tom at all, insisting it was about something else, something that wouldn't come to light until much later, when our biology teacher became a suspect. But Cassandra holds firm to her version. The thing about Cassandra is that she's always been a shadow, the kind of girl whose name teachers forget after 2 weeks of spring break. Kelly, Cindy, Carrie, something with a C though, right? So, when she finally gets the chance to talk to the police and be part of the investigation, she jumps at it. Unfortunately, Cassandra isn't much help to the investigators. She leaves the party at 2 a.m., just 40 minutes before I die, leaving me alone with a group of guys who've brought along some tranquilizers. Sitting next to them felt like being stuck in a fever dream, where Jacques Derrida explains quantum physics at a frat party. At some point, I decided it was time to head back. One of the guys casually asked if I needed someone to walk with me, and I said yes, but no one moved. I glanced back, the campsite faintly visible through the cold white light filtering through the pines. It was only a few meters away, just beyond the trees. I'd walked this path for days, never once feeling threatened by the shadows in the bushes. But tonight, that sinking feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. Still, I refused to be that girl. The one who got scared at every creak in the dark. The one who needed someone to hold her hand for a few steps. So I stood up and said I'd walk alone. Instead of sticking to the dark trail, though, I decided to take a small detour along the riverbank, a bit longer, a bit lighter, and hopefully a bit safer. One of the guys told me to text him when I made it to my tent, but when I didn't, no one even noticed. 16 days after my death, suspicion begins to shift toward our biology teacher. Devin, one of my classmates, reveals that he had felt ill that night and went looking for the teacher's tent, only to find it empty. Soon after, the teacher's behavior takes a strange turn. He starts making inconsistent statements that don't add up. One day, he calls Zoe into his office after class, where he insists that his earlier proposal to her, before the trip, had been nothing but a joke. She understood that, right? It was sarcasm, he says, claiming that what he really meant was that if she wanted to improve her grades, she should consider attending a tutoring service. And this is where Cassandra steps in for the final time. She confesses that she visited our biology teacher after the party and that they went to the boathouse where, according to her, nothing bad happened. He was just there for me. The biology teacher is immediately suspended, but the case against him has nothing to do with mine, as Cassandra's alibi clears him. Meanwhile, the suspicions surrounding Zoe and Tom are too weak to pursue. My case remains unsolved, and eventually people begin to accept the idea that it was just a tragic accident, that I must have hit my head when I jumped into the water. They agree that I seemed unhappy, not just that night, but in general, and that my relationship with my parents, who expected me to excel in everything, was strained. Perhaps the pressure had finally got to her. It's all unsatisfying, of course. Unsatisfying for the local magazine, whose updates eventually dry up. Unsatisfying for the police, left with yet another unsolved case on their desk. Unsatisfying for my parents, who, decades later, will say in an interview that not a day goes by that they don't think of their little girl. Maybe one day, a classmate will write a college essay about my case, reflecting on how it taught them that life can end in an instant. Maybe my story will end up on a true crime podcast, or perhaps Netflix will stretch it into a tightly structured 8-episode miniseries where my body is discovered just 3 minutes in, enough time for viewers to decide if they'll keep watching. Or maybe none of this happens and I'll fade away, like countless other women who are silenced every day simply for being born the wrong sex. It doesn't matter who profits from my story. It doesn't even matter if they eventually find the 2 men I crossed paths with on my way back to the campsite, in the wrong place at the wrong time. None of this matters, because in the end, I'm just another dead girl underwater. I won't be home for Christmas. Life can be messy, complicated, difficult. Sometimes you can just lose yourself in all of it, and in the process, you can lose sight of the things that actually matter. And then one day a storm comes out of the clear blue sky, and you get blown overboard by the tempest, and all is lost in the blink of an eye. This is what happened to me. I just got caught up in all of the things that don't really matter. Money, career status, an address in the right part of town and elite private schools for the kids, and new luxury import autos, and Swiss-made wristwatches with tasteful but recognizable brand logos. Material things. Then came a day when I realized how unimportant it all was, but it was too late. Still, at first I tried to keep up the pretense of normality in the face of immeasurable loss. I had already bought the 12-foot Douglas fir Christmas tree and put up the holiday decorations all around the house. Family was flying in from 3 different states to visit for the holiday. I had arranged car service from the airport for everyone, a catered gourmet dinner for Christmas Eve, nice gifts for all, and I even took the time to memorize a heartwarming toast to the whole family before we sat down to eat. In the end, I had to just junk this because of the references to my wife and children. More than that, really. It just didn't work at all anymore. What was I supposed to do? I felt some strange obligation to appear unfazed, composed, in control of my emotions and my world. I don't know. That has always been my way, or at least the image I have always wanted to project. It's hard to say how much of it was ever truly real, and how much I just manufactured, for whatever reason. And it doesn't matter any longer anyway. It all happened on the evening of December 23rd, and everyone was flying in the next day. I was just numb afterwards, and didn't have the time or motivation for all the phone calls before those flights took off in the morning. so I was left with no choice but to inform everyone of what happened when they arrived at our house that day. My house. Once they were all there, and I had dodged the uncomfortable questions for as long as I possibly could, I gave a very different and mostly improvised speech from the one I had originally planned. Somehow, I made it to the end with dry eyes, though no one else did. I cried enough the previous night at the hospital. I wasn't sad anymore. I was just angry now. Well, folks, it seems that everyone has had a chance to grab a beverage, and although we are not fully gathered together as a family right now, I would like to proceed with some very unfortunate news that I have to share at this time. Not exactly a toast. Nothing like a toast, actually. The opposite of a toast. Just some words I have to say. I took a deep breath and a long, slow sip of my Macallan Scotch. I felt all the eyes on me, and I thought about what I should say, what I could say. I hadn't planned this out. I tried. I just couldn't. I want to thank you all for coming this far to spend the Christmas holiday with us, but I am afraid that us is just me now. Yesterday evening, around 6:30 p.m., Melanie and the kids were driving home from the mall down the road when they were T-boned at the intersection of Torrance and Sepulveda by a 25-year-old off-duty sheriff's deputy named Kyle Langtree, who ran a red light. All three of them were killed, but the sheriff's deputy, driving a large SUV, only sustained a concussion and some minor injuries. He is still in St. Mary's right now, but expected to be released within a day or two. I paused and drained off the rest of my scotch. Everyone stared at me, their faces fixed in various expressions of shock and horror and disbelief, the tears already starting to fall. Hands were raised to cover mouths. I took another deep breath and continued, not even knowing what to say next, only knowing that I had to say something. I kind of muttered the next part down towards my shoes. The local news channels are all reporting that this sheriff's deputy had just left a holiday party at a bar down the street, and the LAPD officer who was first on the scene breathalyzed this guy, and he apparently blew a 1.8 BAC, more than twice the legal level for DUI. When the LAPD cop radioed this in, he was advised that this sheriff's deputy was the younger brother of both the local DA and the U.S. congressman representing this district. This was picked up over the police scanners used by several local news outlets. Instead of being taken to jail, he was taken to St. Mary's, like I said. Apparently, he also had 2 prior DUIs that were both dismissed for no apparent reason. You can read about it all here in today's paper if you want. Front page. I dropped a copy of the local newspaper on the table. I paused again. I didn't know what else to say. My older brother Jamie came up and gave me a powerful hug and whispered some kind words in my ear and cried some tears onto my neck and collar. My Aunt Jane approached me, but then stopped, not knowing what to do. I didn't blame her. I didn't either, but I did my best. You are all my dearest friends and family, and I thank you all so much for coming to be here. I am just so sorry that it has come under these terrible circumstances. I set my empty glass on a coaster on the table. Somehow it was still important for me to appear unrattled, composed. The coaster was somehow still important. We all have to do what we all have to do for the love of our family, and you have all shown and proven that by being here right now. I love you all dearly, and I'm so sorry to have to share this terrible news with you at this time. I pretended to get choked up. Then I lowered my head and excused myself and went to my bedroom to get what I needed as my family broke out in open gasps and cries and barely restrained sobs and sorrows in the living room. I quietly slipped out the side door and drove my Mercedes AMG GT to St. Mary's Hospital. I parked it in a handicapped spot when I got there. I wouldn't be needing it any longer. I decided to leave it to my nephew Nicholas once I had a chance to meet with my lawyer. He was a good kid who just graduated from Penn State, and I knew he loved that car. He deserved it. I decided to set him up with some cash too, just to help him get started. You never know what life has in store for you. I certainly didn't, and that's how I ended up here, sitting in this small cell in the LA County Jail, spending Christmas Day all by myself, eating a bologna sandwich for dinner, or trying to anyway. I don't have much appetite. This is the first time in my entire life that I have spent Christmas alone. I will be on suicide watch for the next 48 hours, and after that, the wheels and gears of the legal system will make their slow and inevitable turns, and I will end up in Pelican Bay or San Quentin or someplace like that for the rest of my life. Murder 1, assault with a deadly weapon, menacing, illegal parking in a designated handicap space. Haha. They have me. They have me dead to rights. They have me on video for all of it. I don't care. It was unfortunate that I had to put down that security guard who tried to stop me from reaching Deputy Langtry's hospital room, though. I shot low, in the center of his thigh. Hopefully he will be okay. Hopefully I missed the femoral artery. I tried my best, but it all happened pretty fast and I'm no marksman. It could have been worse, I guess. At least he was already in a level 1 trauma unit. Young guy. I feel bad about that part. They won't tell me anything about how he's doing, or if he has a wife and kids or anything like that. I hope he's okay. I will leave some money for him too once I meet with my lawyer and update my last will and testament, for whatever that might be worth. I don't know what else I can do. I just feel really bad about it. I never wanted to hurt anyone else. Anyway, they can't keep me on suicide watch forever. And like I said, we all have to do what we all have to do for the love of our family. I did what I had to do for the love of my family. I have no regrets. Anyone want the rest of this bologna sandwich? I'm not hungry. Merry Christmas. I think this one will probably be my last, but I hope you enjoy many more, engulfed in the warmth and love of all your family and friends. I just need to find a rope, son of Satan. I awoke to a bright light streaming through a crack in one of the wooden boards I had put up in a paranoid, booze-infused haze. It was June, and the heat was stifling. My mouth was the kind of dry where your cheeks and lips stick to your teeth, the leftover taste of alcohol offensive. I sat up slowly, the usual nausea kicking in, my head pounding, room spinning. I looked down at my shaky hands, trying to steady myself as I half rolled off the couch. A sweaty silhouette of me left behind, my shirt stuck to me. I stumbled to the kitchen, only allowing one eye open to keep things in focus, my head down as I waited for the kettle to boil, impatient as the usual hangxiety kicked in. I knew my drinking was a problem, it always has been. But as I'm nearing 40 now, the mornings are becoming more unpleasant and unmanageable. But I know I'll never stop. I put 2 big scoops of coffee and boiling water into a mug, topping it off with a shot of vodka. I downed it and made another, willing the shakes to stop, my eyes blurry and stomach churning. I took the second mug back to the couch and turned on the TV, slowly coming back to life. My mind was quieter today, a numbness over the usual paranoia or anger that resides in me. Sometimes I think it's a darkness, straight from the pits of hell, the angel on one shoulder missing. As long as I could remember, I had been plagued with dark thoughts, a curse passed down from my abusive father, a life of isolation and self-sabotage sending me spiraling further into this abyss over the years. Some days, I think I can snap out of it or have a small voice telling me I need help and that maybe there's still hope for me. But this had just become a way of life for me now, my norm. I had come to accept it. Alcohol and Netflix were my only friends. I sustained an easy work-from-home job that only stole a few hours each day. My manager didn't bother me, and I didn't bother him. He didn't care as long as I hit the numbers, which I always did. It didn't pay much, but kept a roof over my head and supplied my vices. I flicked straight to the news channel like I did every day. There had been a string of murders in the city, and now they were saying, there is a pattern suggesting that it's the work of serial killer. I shivered, watching as they wheeled a sixth victim in a body bag, a one-way trip to the morgue. My head pounded again. I swallowed some paracetamol with a swig of vodka, not taking my eyes off the TV. The killings had been brutal. I watched along each time with a morbid curiosity, like I was watching a fictional Netflix series about serial killers, almost forgetting that these were people living in the same city I am. All victims were female, early 20s, normally Good Samaritan types, people with a squeaky clean record who wouldn't have even stolen a pack of gum in their short life. Most were religious and attended church on a Sunday. I'd be safe, standing at 6 feet, fashioning a Jesus-length beard and enough petty crimes on my record to piss off anyone in law enforcement. The media were raving about the symbolism the killer left behind and had even given him a nickname, Son of Satan. It doesn't quite have the same ring as Jack the Ripper or the Zodiac Killer, but they were just scratching the surface of what he does and what he is capable of. This guy was different. According to reporters, he stalks his victims over the course of 6 days, leaving satanic symbolism in his midst. Never leaves a trace of evidence, other than gifts of animal bones or a pentagram, sometimes an upside-down cross, all with no fingerprints or so much as a wisp of hair. The symbols were the only thing that changed from kill to kill. The 6-day stalk, bondage of the hands and feet, and 6 stab wounds to the heart were always consistent. I shivered again. On the dark web, some crime scene photos were leaked and spread vastly around social media. The bloody sight, something out of a horror movie. I chugged another glass of vodka. The police had nothing. They made an educated guess that it could be a male in their 30s or 40s. Probably some crazy religious guy that they had depicted as some skinny, sad sod who lives in their mother's basement. I rolled my eyes and half chuckled, a wheezy sound that made me cough. One thing they all agreed on was that the killer was clever and meticulous. He taunted his victims and he taunted police, never leaving a trace. All they could do was warn people to be safe and on guard. If anyone experienced any stalking or hints that they were next, were to report to police straight away. Boy, are they not ready for the amount of calls they're about to receive. The fear the media have installed does half the job for the killer. I rolled my eyes again, pouring another glass, slightly amused by the stupidity of law enforcement and media. I turned it off and opened my laptop to get on with some work before heading out to the shop. The bills aren't going to pay themselves. Completing work in record time, I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, then finally brushed the rancid taste away, swallowing some toothpaste for good measure. I looked up at the disheveled guy staring back. Hair awry, bags hung heavy around my dark pinpoint-like eyes, the spit of my father. I inwardly groaned, my heart palpating slightly. I changed into some dark tracksuits, tamed my hair with cap and donned some sunglasses. I whistled as I walked outside, sweat pouring from my skin, the back of my neck clammy. I gritted my teeth with discomfort, while the sun beat down harder, the whistling a distraction. The streets were mostly empty, a few dog walkers and cars dotted around. I found myself at the shop and enjoyed the cool feel of air conditioning, taking a long breath in. I picked up the essentials: vodka, fags, and instant noodles, the economy making every transaction feel painful. I felt that rage again as I tapped my card and stormed out, trying to calm my thoughts, and drank the first bottle on my way back. Needing a pit stop, I paused on a bench, starting on my second bottle and chain smoking, until I felt sick and black spots started to cloud my sight. My head hurt as evil thoughts and feelings flooded me. I eventually stumbled home, unsure how I got there and why it was so dark out already. I tripped over my own feet and crashed onto the couch face first, full blackness taking over. I was in and out of consciousness for several days, time missing as I looked at my watch and realized nearly a week had gone by. I really need to stop drinking. I went to the kitchen. Coffee, vodka, couch. The routine continued. I turned the TV on, and yet another murder had occurred, less than a mile from my home. Same pattern for the most part. I smirked and flicked to the next channel. Headline: Son of Satan breaks pattern. My eyebrows creased and my heart rate picked up. Killer stabs victim 6 times to the abdomen, left the house in disarray. Forensics have bagged new evidence. That couldn't be right. My father's voice boomed in my head. I switched to another channel. Son of Satan copycat killer. New information has come to light as detectives connect current killings with a string of murders with similar symbolism and pattern that happened 30 years ago in the countryside. Killer was never found. The voice boomed louder. I ran to the bathroom to throw up and realized my clothes were soaked with blood. I fucked up. My father would be writhing in his grave. His idiot son carrying on his legacy gets caught because he can't handle his booze. I threw up again. Panic rose and I gripped my chest as I struggled to breathe, spots of lights in my vision. The room was closing in. I turned on the shower, holding onto the sink with one hand, ripping off my clothes with the other, before allowing the scalding hot water to wash away my sins. "I'm sorry," I screamed, the disappointment of my dead dad all too much. I sobbed on the floor of the shower, shame and guilt ripping me apart. Red and blue lights flashed past my window, snapping me awake, and I stood up, getting ready run, fight or flight kicking in. Bang, bang, bang! My front door rattled. Panic-stricken, I scrambled for my clothes and slipped, the alcohol haze wearing off. My head hurt as it hit the sink on my way down. I couldn't move. The room was spinning. A louder bang. Footsteps. I faded out. Trial by egotism. The Honorable Judge Harold Brybar strode to the bench, bearing a coy smile. The court knew that smile well, as did millions watching on view screens all over Mars, as did tens of millions back on Earth who wouldn't get the feed for another hour or so. They also knew the arch of his thick gray eyebrows, the well-trimmed salt and pepper hair he'd gracefully let recede, the petite spectacles he wore when reading, and the mild way he cleared his throat to bring the whole courtroom to attention. In offense to all known theories of jurisprudence, Judge Harold Brybar was a celebrity judge, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. As Brybar sat down, he produced his legendary gavel from the folds of his cloak. It was the gavel that had sent General Sabrina Gallo to the slammer. It was the gavel that had brought justice to the ungrateful 8. It was the gavel that had, so mournfully, let the Scarlet Assassin walk on a series of technicalities. Years ago, a rookie reporter dubbed it the cinematic hammer of justice, and the moniker stuck. though Brybar only laughed and shook his head ruefully when asked about the moniker. Chekhov would have surely side-eyed this fabled instrument of law and order. "This should be the final day of the trial," Judge Brybar said after customarily clearing his throat. "If Miss Tottle's statement runs long, we'll cut for lunch at 11. How long do you think you'll go?" He flashed a smile at the defendant. "An hour should do it." Marissa Tottle flashed a smile right back between lips stained dark red. She came to court in a maroon pantsuit with a long matching jacket that almost reached the ground, and dark lipstick and fingernail polish to match. Stylish, but, for her, understated. Earlier in the trial, she'd favored brighter colors, including a pastel blue skirt that drew immense attention, much of it mockery in the press. She'd been on trial for previous burglaries and had proven as much a celebrity as the judge overseeing her case. That she'd taken to defending herself only heightened the circus atmosphere. You couldn't wish for a more theatrical combination of defendant and judge. "Excellent," the judge said. "That would mean the jury can deliberate over lunch. A smooth running ship at last." The assembled audience, standing room only, laughed nervously, revealing how much tension the courtroom held. In theory, Towtle should be guilty as a Labrador by a demolished birthday cake. She'd been caught red-handed in the most elaborate and movie-like theft in the history of the planet after all. But many speculated Towtle had a trick or two up her sleeve. Gambling websites gave her a 15% chance of acquittal and even a 5% chance of escape. The third prime participant in this drama feels ordinary by comparison. Veronica Brief charted a conventional path as she rose through the prosecutorial ranks. Top grades, hard work, schmoozing, ambition, and a photographic memory. There's little reason to elaborate on her story. Veronica had aimed for calm, efficient, and professional as her persona. She let Marissa and Judge Brybar provide the entertainment. The stately prosecutor drew little mention in the tabloids despite overseeing the case of the millennium. And she'd presented a good case, which was easy in one sense because of how strong the evidence was. Someone had stolen the twin pins of Mars, diamond-encrusted spikes that ceremonially finished the oxygen dome of the first Martian city. Marissa Towtle was a known high-stakes burglar and ex-con. She'd been present at the benefit concert from which the pins were stolen. She'd purchased the chemicals needed for the distracting foam bomb that had gone off at the concert. And most damningly, one of the diamond pins had been found in her very apartment. The list of witnesses and items and evidence is so long that, again, there's little need to go into much detail. The most troubling possibility was that if the jury liked Marissa too much, that they were simply so entertained, they might ignore the evidence and vote for acquittal. Today, the defendant would make her last appeal. Today, Marissa Towtle, who'd fired her lawyers after just 4 days into the proceedings, would make her closing argument. She wasn't a lawyer, had never been to law school, and committed innumerable mistakes of law throughout the trial. But she still possessed the supernatural confidence of a legendary burglar. So she'd plowed ahead, learned from each mistake of process, always found a way to laugh with the audience as she suffered a series of sustained objections against her. The red planet stood entranced, listening to how she would make her final plea. Marissa Towtle rose. She was quite short, but cut a dramatic figure nonetheless. She strode to the center of the room to address the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my honored peers, good morning to you. Also, good morning to everyone watching in the live audience in this wonderful city of New Olympus and all across Mars and our sister planet of Earth. Also, a quick shout out to anyone reading the transcript in the future. That's serious dedication." Laughter. The prosecution has done a thorough job presenting the evidence against me. and I would be foolish to claim no fear. They found one of the diamond pins at my apartment. Can you believe my incredulity? Without that one piece of evidence, all they have is hearsay and circumstance. And who hasn't been hurt by hearsay and circumstance? I was sorely mistreated on the day they overturned my home. Veronica had decided early in the trial not to be surprised by anything Marissa said. Here she was, starting her final defense by bringing up the single strongest piece of evidence against her, submerging it in a strange cocktail of jokes and grievances. Still, she was as oddly compelling as she'd been the whole trial. Have I mentioned how good you look, jury? The fall weather has really brought out your fashion sense. Such lovely browns and greens. I'm going to miss you all when this trial is finally over. And soon it will be over, won't it? Oh, I don't know if this is legal. Is it legal to compliment and reminisce with the jury? It is, if there's no objection from the prosecution. This was the judge, now looking in Veronica's direction with a raised eyebrow. All around the court, Veronica felt all eyes suddenly on her. And it was true. She could object for relevance or ingratiation, which Mars had added to the legal code 50 years ago. No objection, Veronica said after a pause worthy of a sitcom, to titters and laughter from the audience. She hadn't intended to object at all, no matter how wild the defendant got. It's considered poor form to object during closing arguments, unless the faults are egregious. Plus, ordinary folks see through flattery and immaterial wanderings most of the time, and that should be especially so in this case. Marissa wasn't just on trial for grand theft, but also for assault. When she'd set off the foam bomb at the dedication ceremony, 3 people had been injured, and many dozens more might have been. These charges alone could add up to decades behind bars. A jury might excuse burglary if they liked a defendant, but harming innocent spectators? No way, Veronica thought. Marissa had avoided lengthy prison sentences from previous burglaries through clever negotiating, and because she'd always been careful to avoid violence. Now she might be mere hours from a lifetime in prison. How was she so calm? At this point, Marissa had moved on to a PowerPoint presentation with a selection of quotes projected onto the large screen across from the jury, with certain words highlighted for effect. The rotten witch made all the plans and said it would be an easy score without any risk of harm to anyone. That's what one of my supposed henchmen said about me, if you'll remember. I don't see why that insult was necessary. Read the next quote, this time from a witness who supposedly saw me outside the concert hall. She was laughing like a hyena, or like some evil witch. With the shouting inside, I could barely hear her, but I was close enough I could just make out the cackle. I could read each and every one of these quotes, each more demeaning than the last, but you can look over the full list if you've got the stomach for it. So many horrible things said about me, which I don't mind. I can accept taunts and jeers. But it is certainly interesting that so many of these witnesses couldn't help but include spiteful, disparaging remarks. And you'll notice how many bring out the W word. It almost feels like they were coordinating their testimony somehow. Veronica caught a glimpse of the jury. She read ambivalence on their faces. Scowls, smirks, narrowed, focused eyes, and furrowed brows. They were all paying attention, but none appeared sympathetic, and only a few seemed amused. She found it galling that Marissa would imply misconduct from the prosecution. Early in the legal process, Marissa had tried to trade the location of the second diamond pin for legal protection, which Veronica would never have agreed to. Not leastwise because the police were convinced they could lean on her conspirators to produce the second pin, an assumption which, 7 weeks later, had not come true. Those negotiations were inadmissible at trial, but made Marissa's attempts to cast the prosecution as corrupt all the more preposterous. Marissa knew she was guilty, and knew the prosecution knew she was guilty. And then there's the matter of the diamond pin of peace, found in my apartment, right under my very bed. It's the linchpin of the case against me. But do you find that likely? That a supposed master criminal would conceal the single most damning evidence in the most obvious and cliched place to hide something? Ha! And that underscores my next point, that the diamond pin of prosperity is yet to be found. If I had stolen them both, why hide one in an obvious place than another where the police have yet still to find? I'm not going to accuse anyone else of being the real thief, and therefore the person who planted the evidence while keeping half the spoils for themselves, not right at this moment anyway. I don't have the resources of the police or prosecutors to chase leads and likely suspects. But how can you not be suspicious of these circumstances? Marissa had raised her voice by this point. Despite her grandiosity, she'd kept her tone civil, even playful. But now she strode about the floor, her jacket swirling in great red arcs. She turned to the prosecution table and approached Veronica, though even with her heels, she stood barely a few inches taller than her adversary, sitting up straight. Marissa leaned over the table between them. Veronica held her gaze in as steely a manner as she could muster. She wasn't intimidated, but feared smiling at this bit of theatrics, which might send the wrong message to the jury. They've stacked things so thoroughly against me. A huge team of cops and prosecutors all working to dig up evidence. 3 of my friends called to testify against me. Hundreds of hours of security video. Reams of texts stolen from my phone. All this effort searching for any slip-up, inconsistency, or wrong place, wrong time circumstance. And in the end, their whole case rests on a single, dubious discovery. Marissa whirled on Veronica, her jacket cape swirling like a tornado. She approached the judge, held his eye contact for many moments. Veronica couldn't read her face with her back turned, but Judge Brybar's eyes narrowed, turning from amused to suspicious to worried. Only then did worry enter Veronica's own mind. Could Marissa really have a grand plan to turn the trial on its head, or even to escape? Everyone in this courtroom stands against me. I've been fighting every official and advocate aligned for a single purpose. These whole 7 weeks I've fought. She stood right before the judge now, a dark red fingernail pointed but a meter from his face. Control yourself, the judge warned, his voice steady. Marissa slowly retreated her hand to her chest, but kept the finger out. Then she approached still further and placed her hands on the edge of the bench. Judge Brybar screwed his face up in an apoplectic grimace. I kindly ask you to back away, the judge said with barely concealed rage. And Marissa did so. She turned slowly, her jacket an eddy rather than a hurricane. The whole audience appeared to exhale at this drawdown in tension. The calm wouldn't last. The true thief, the true mastermind, is in this courtroom right now. Marissa raised her hand, extending that damning index finger clad in crimson, thrusting it high in the air like the barrel of a smoking gun. The courtroom turned deathly quiet. Marissa twirled her finger in the air, once, twice. A woman screamed in the audience. Several people stood. Veronica noticed the judge fumbling for his gavel. Why was his gavel not to hand? Veronica's photographic memory went to work, rewinding to a minute prior. The gavel had disappeared from the moment Marissa had placed her hands on the bench. When she'd made that dramatic turn, she must have... Approach, Your Honor? Veronica called out, but was drowned out by the growing tumult of the audience. She stood and shouted, "Approach, Your Honor! Your gavel! She has your gavel in her sleeve!" The chaos intensified, cries and laughter mixing together. Judge Brybar's eyes were wide as Phobos and Deimos in the Martian night sky. The bailiffs stood frozen for a moment, but one caught Veronica's eye. They nodded at each other and sprung into motion. Veronica charged. She couldn't say why, necessarily. But the thought entered her mind that perhaps this was a grand distraction to allow Marissa some clever escape, and that was just too much of an affront to the seasoned prosecutor. It was a breach of decorum to get involved in bailiff duties, but Veronica had been a track athlete in college and had taken basic police training, and there was so much energy in the courtroom. The bailiff, a stocky woman with a tight ponytail, whose expression almost never changed, her name was Lawrence, Veronica wanted to say, got there first and held Marissa under the arms. Marissa was making a show of struggling without really struggling, calling her capture a brute. Veronica held Marissa's eye contact while she riffled in her sleeves, producing the lost gavel within seconds. "I believe this belongs to you," she said, with what she hoped was cinematic showmanship, as she cast the gavel onto the bench. Adjourned. Adjourned. Take the defendant into custody. The judge had retrieved the cinematic hammer of justice and was banging it on the bench like a woodpecker. Slowly, the veins in his forehead receded as the bailiffs took Marissa away. Next, the judge leaned down to whisper to Veronica, "Meet me in chambers. I fear we're looking at a mistrial." Of course, a mistrial. Was that Marissa's plan? But how would this help her? More chances to escape, maybe, but then she'd surely earned tighter security from this fiasco. She'd wait in prison for the next trial, and the evidence against her would be as strong as ever. Why had she done this? Why had she made such a scene? But then, she'd so loved playing the lawyer, stirring up drama and having all eyes on her. These last 7 weeks may have been the most exciting of an already legendary life. With this performance, Marissa Towdle hadn't earned her freedom, but she'd earned another shot at being the center of the known universe. Shadowed intentions. 3 women missing so far. 3 women in just 6 months. The Daily News has become obsessed with the narrative, smothering us in stories from every angle. It's all anyone is talking about, since everyone has an opinion. "It's always the husband," the shopkeeper says matter-of-factly, crossing her arms. "Did you hear that she turned down a colleague for a date? Sounds like he was bitter about it," murmurs the waitress at the local cafe. "Maybe if she didn't sleep around so much, she wouldn't have gotten herself into trouble," says the barkeep, waggling a knowing eyebrow my way as I pretend to nod in agreement. Plenty of leads, a few arrests, but still no dice. 1 missing woman is a tragedy. 2 is cause for panic. 3, there's near hysteria. Businesses are closing their doors well before dusk, and schools have moved to home learning via video calls. By the time night falls, an unenforced curfew has rendered the streets deserted. No one walks home alone anymore, except for me. I don't have a choice. I've been following the same path through the city for 3 months. I'm taking care I keep to the well-lit routes, always looking over my shoulder, making sure I'm fully aware of my surroundings and paying close attention to the few people who dare to walk along the main road with me. I try not to look too nervous as I clutch my handbag tightly to my side and walk quicker than usual. Before I left, I set my smartwatch to monitor my heart rate rather than show the time. The beat is faster than usual, as it has been every time I've stepped out into the night for the past 3 months. There's something different about this evening, though. I can feel it in the crisp air. tension courses through my veins, settling uneasily in my stomach. The darkness is almost suffocating, weighing down upon me as I walk away from the center, the distant hum of traffic fading as I turn down a quieter road. A lamplight flickers above me, highlighting the cracked pavement in a strobe effect. Not that I would wear anything else given the circumstances, but I'm glad I'm wearing flats tonight, considering the amount of rain we've been having. Imagine twisting my ankle because my heels caught on a dodgy bit of tarmac hidden by a puddle. And there it is, a footstep. I spin around, facing the danger behind me head on. Am I sure? The night remains almost perfectly still, aside from the flicker of movement from leaves still clinging to the almost empty branches in the trees above. Tilting my head, I listen, focusing all my energy into honing in on that specific sound. 10 seconds pass. I hear nothing out of the ordinary. On the contrary, it's deathly quiet. Slowly I turn around and continue my journey, sneaking a quick glance down at my watch. 110 beats per minute, getting faster now. The slap of my boots against the wet pavement echoes down the narrow street. The only sound aside from my hot breath escaping my lips, forming plumes of smoke as I pick up the pace towards my destination. So close, but yet miles away somehow. Shadows claw at my heels, casting alien shapes that don't appear to be from this plane. The endless walls of the brick terraces on either side of me reach long into the sky and beyond, leaving nowhere for me to go but ahead or back the way I came. My head snaps up. This time, I'm sure. I hear him. The unmistakable sound of footsteps, rhythmic and deliberate. I reckon he's about 10 meters behind me, far enough that I could outrun him for the moment. I'm confident in that. I quicken my pace, shivering from a potent mix of cold and adrenaline. Everything hinges on my next few decisions, and I fight to keep my wits about me. The metal gates of Terrier's Park loom tall to my left, and I follow where the path splits into the yawning gateway, away from the streetlights, away from the city, into silence and ink-black shadows. The moonlight illuminates the slick path, the earthy scent of rotting leaves filling the dead air. There's no wind anymore. Maybe it's holding its breath, waiting anxiously to see how things pan out for me. As my mysterious companion and I distance ourselves from society, his footsteps close the gap between us. Finally, I'm aware of my heart pounding against my chest, the beat thundering in my ears. My eyes, wide and wild, flit down to my watch. The numbers are as high as I've ever seen them. It's interesting how difficult it is to distinguish excitement from fear, don't you think? In fact, in a lot of ways they are remarkably similar. Both can heighten your awareness and focus. Senses sharpen, energy surges, thrill and threat merge and blur. My heart rate is the same when I experience both emotions, as if they're interchangeable. He's closing in. I feel his menacing aura maybe 3 meters behind me, just as we reach an area with bushes. We're alone, completely alone. Perfect. Bag already unzipped in anticipation, I slide my hand in and wrap my fingers around the handle of my gun. 3 months it's taken me to catch his attention. 3 months to make sure the cat would become the mouse. Finger tight on the trigger, I slow my pace, welcoming his breath on my neck. Before he can raise the hammer above his head, though, I whirl around like a dust devil, eager to look into his eyes. I watch as it dawns upon him that, in his arrogance, he's neglected to account for the fact that there's more than one serial killer in the area. I inhale the cold sweat of fear that pinpricks his brow as he realizes that, after tonight, only one of us will be left standing, and it isn't going to be him. Blind panic sets in, and he runs. I make sure he doesn't get far,